Hi everyone and welcome to a very delayed June reading wrap up. I have no excuse, I've just been very busy the last few weeks, so this is the first opportunity I've had to actually sit down and film for any length of time, but I'm very excited to talk about some books, well, the books that I read in June. Usually when I film my wrap ups, I split them in half, so I start by doing a series update and then I move on and talk about the standalones that I read. I'm not going to do that this time, only because a lot of the books that I read last month were part of series, but they're series that are either made up of standalones or I'm not bothered about continuing the series. If you're interested in any particular book, then I will have timestamps in the description, but I'm going to start with The Women by Kristin Hannah. So this was one of the standalones that I read last month. Kristin Hannah is a pretty popular historical fiction writer, and I've read two of her books so far, other than this one, and really enjoyed them. However, The Women is my least favourite so far. I feel like that's a bit of an unpopular opinion because it has such a high average rating on Goodreads, and I will say that the audiobook for this was fantastic. It's narrated by Julia Whelan, who is a really popular audiobook narrator, and I loved the narration. It kept me engaged the whole way through. This was such a difficult book to rate because there were certain aspects that I loved. I loved how this was following a combat nurse in Vietnam and it was showing her experience over there. The setting was so well described, I felt like I could smell it. And then the second half focused on this main character's experience with PTSD, and you see her go on this downward spiral, which was really heartbreaking to read, but also there were some really deliberately frustrating moments that, you know, got a reaction from me, and I did feel so many emotions while reading this. There were parts where I felt like I could see the way that the author wanted me to feel. It felt a little heavy-handed in that sense, and also I hated the romantic elements. That was what spoiled the book for me. I don't want to go into details, obviously, because of spoilers, but I didn't like the ending. I thought the ending was so convenient and it made me roll my eyes. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars, but it was a 3 stars because some aspects felt like 2 stars and some aspects felt like 4 stars. So I didn't really know how to rate it, but yeah, I had very strong feelings on this book and not all of them were positive, but I still would recommend it, I think, if you've enjoyed Kristin Hannah's books in the past. Next on my list is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker-Chan, which is historical fantasy that leans heavier on the historical. It's set in China and it follows a main character whose brother is destined for greatness. However, she ends up taking on his destiny. You follow her as she joins this monastery and trains to become a monk, and then she also joins this rebellion who's trying to take down the empire. But he read this with Nat from Nerdy Nat Reads, and I think we had similar thoughts and feelings. I enjoyed certain aspects. Again, I liked the beginning. I thought that the beginning had a really good setup. I was intrigued, and objectively this was interesting. I finished the book and I immediately wanted to go out and research this time period and learn everything I could about it. However, I was also quite bored throughout most of the middle. I think the main strength of this book was the way that it handled gender identity and explored that. I found those elements really interesting, and there was also a romance that I thought was kind of sweet. I think the main character is someone that you can really get behind and root for. I just didn't find it that compulsively readable. Like, every time I put it down, I wasn't that fussed about picking it back up. So I finished it, I gave it 3 stars, but I don't think I'm going to continue with the next book. Next on my list, I have 2 books that I'm going to talk about together because they're part of the same series and I read them both in June. Those are In the Blink of an Eye and Leave No Trace by Jo Callaghan. So these are the first 2 books in a new crime thriller series that follows a detective who is paired up with this AI detective. So she's called Cat, he's called Locke. The series is called Cat and Locke. It had a really unique concept and I enjoyed the discussions around AI and the pros and cons, how AI can help or hinder an investigation. I thought all of that was the main strength of the book. I also liked that this took place in Warwickshire, which isn't that far from me. It was a little on the nose at times, but I liked the interactions between Cat and Locke. I thought they had an interesting dynamic. The actual crime plot, though, I didn't love as much. There was a pantomime villain that really irritated me. Towards the end, there were certain scenes that just felt really over dramatic and it wasn't my kind of thing. So I gave both books, I think, 3.5 stars. However, I preferred the plot in book 2. The audiobooks are great though. I listened to them both on audio because they're available through Scribd, and I liked that the narrator did different voices for the different characters. Some of the accents I'm not 100% sure on, but because this takes place in the Midlands, some of the accents I thought were pretty accurate. So yeah, I will continue this series, I think. I don't know when the next book is coming out, but it was an enjoyable series. I liked the first 2 books, and I think the author has potential to grow as a writer. Next on my list, we have Mindwalker by Kate Dillon, which is a YA sci-fi, so a little out of my comfort zone, but I read this for a read and vlog. I'll leave that linked in the description and in the cards, but essentially I read this because I wanted to read all of my Goldsborough books this year, and I haven't done that yet. I haven't done a very good job of even picking them up, so I thought I'd give this a go, and it was very fast-paced. I liked how it felt like an action movie, and I could picture it that way. We follow this main character called Sil, who works for a corporation that has agents out in the field committing corporate espionage, and if they ever get into trouble, they can call on Sil or anyone else in her team to help them out. So Sil has a supercomputer grafted to her brain, which allows her to reach into people's minds with their permission. So she can take over their bodies and help them get to safety. And Sil has a 100% perfect record until something happens and she's accused of treason. She ends up going on the run, and that is the plot basically. She ends up getting caught in this rebellion against this corporation, and I thought this was fun. It was really fast paced, it's really short, it does wrap up like a standalone as well, even though there's another book that's set within this world. You can read this as a standalone, and I would recommend it if you like books that have a lot of cool technology, or if you want something that feels like a Marvel movie. I think that's actually the way that it's been marketed. I gave it 3 stars, but it was a fun time and I'm glad that I read it. Next up we have A Curse of Blood and Wolves by Melissa McTernan, which I think was my worst book of the month. I wouldn't say that it was disappointing because I didn't have that high expectations going into it, but this is a paranormal romance that I thought could be a good time. Literally nothing happened. This has 0 plot. I think if I had to try and give a brief synopsis of what happens, we basically have this main character, Ruby. I think that's her name. I might be making that up, but we have our main character, and then the love interest is this wolf shifter who has essentially been stalking her every time she's been walking home from work. She works in a bar in the local town. This is set in contemporary times, which I wasn't actually sure if that was going to be the case, but it is set in our world. It takes place in this small town, and we have our main character, the love interest, and the main character is being targeted for some reason, but we're not sure why. I finished the book and I'm still not sure why, but our love interest suspects that either his old pack is responsible or they know something about what's going on. So he's trying to help her, trying to find out why she's being targeted and by who, and it was so boring. It wasn't even smutty. I thought this was going to be super spicy, and it wasn't really. It was insta-lust, and then feelings eventually developed, and yeah, I was bored. I actually read A Curse of Blood and Wolves for a reading vlog where I was reading the first 3 books that were chosen for the Fairy Loot Romantasy subscription. So the next book that I picked up for that vlog was Nectar of the Wicked by Ella Fields. This was the book that I was most excited for because looking at the synopsis, it actually sounded like it had a plot. It follows a main character who is a changeling. So she was taken as a baby into this middle land between the Fae realm and the human realm, and she was swapped with a human child. As an adult, she is now desperate to find out where she came from and also return to the Fae realm, and the love interest is this dark and brooding fae who is literally the most stereotypical bad boy you could ever imagine. He agrees to help her, but only if she agrees to marry him. So this follows her as she goes to the Winter Court and learns that he might have his own agenda. That's all I'm gonna say. I started off liking the main character, but as the book went on, I found her so frustrating because she kept thinking to herself how much she hated this this guy, but then her actions wouldn't follow through. Like, her actions weren't matching her thoughts, and it just didn't make sense to me. If you are looking for a romantasy that has lots of spice right from the beginning and that has a real focus on the relationship, I would say this is 75% romance and then 25% plot, maybe even 80% romance and 20% plot, then I think this could work for you. Because I didn't feel that invested in the relationship, I don't think I'm gonna continue the series, even though it is just a duology. Next on my list is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, which was one of my most anticipated thriller releases for 2024. I actually had an arc of this through NetGalley. It came out in early July in the UK, but in the US it was out in June, I believe. I have a whole dedicated video for this, so I'll leave it linked in the cards and in the description. But in short, I thought this was okay. I gave it 4 stars. Not my favourite Riley Sager, but definitely not my least favourite. The atmosphere was really good, and I loved the setting and the nostalgic 90s vibes. It had some genuinely creepy moments that had me on the edge of my seat, and something that I think Riley Sager does really well is he sets up the plot so you're constantly questioning, is something paranormal going on, or is there a more human explanation? And that's something that I really enjoy. The perspectives in this were also interesting because the main character is a guy, and Riley Sager has previously only written from female perspectives. It's also multi-POV, so you have this main character, Ethan, I want to say his name is, and when he was a kid, his best friend went missing while they were both camping in his back garden. So this has followed him throughout his entire life, and he's now, I think, in his 40s or late 30s, and he's returned to his childhood home, and he feels like he might be being haunted by his former friend. I enjoyed this one. I think some of the twists were a little bit obvious, however, I didn't see the direction it was going in. I quite liked the ending. I know that some people have hated the ending because Riley Sager is known for being very over the top and campy, and this was more of a quiet ending, which is something that I tend to like. I tend to like thrillers that other people describe as boring, so yeah, take from that what you will, but I gave this one 4 stars. Next up we have a romance, and that is Role Playing by Cathy Yardley. So this I listened to on audio, and honestly it was so cute I almost cried. It follows 2 main characters who meet through playing an online video game, and initially she thinks that he's a lot younger than he actually is, and he thinks that she's a lot older. So when they meet in person, it's a little bit awkward because neither of them were expecting the other person to actually be a similar age. I think she's 38. No, she's 48 and he's 50. Loved seeing them go from online friends to in-person friends to realising that they had feelings for each other. This also has demisexual and bisexual representation. It was difficult to read in places because of how this character's family treats them. It felt frustrating in a way that was done deliberately, but I was so invested in these characters. I thought they were really compatible and I was really rooting for them to get together. So I think I gave this 4 stars, but I'm questioning why. Maybe it is closer to a 5 stars, and I will definitely read other books by this author. Next up, I am actually going to do a little series update because I made progress in the Rook and Rose trilogy. In June, I read the second book, which is called The Liar's Knot. This was 5 stars. I think this is actually one of my favourite books of the year so far, and it's really annoying because I finished this after I'd already filmed the mid-year book tag, where one of the questions is, what is your favourite sequel of the year so far? This is my favourite sequel of the year so far. I loved it. I thought the world and the way that it expanded was so interesting. I love the characters. It has a similar setting to The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch, but with politics that remind me a lot of the David trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. Lots of detailed and intricate world building, including several magic systems that take a little while to understand, but once it clicks into place, it's so clever, so interesting. The characters feel complex and multi-layered, and the first book essentially follows this main character, Ren, who is a con artist that's trying to infiltrate a noble family, but obviously at this point the plot has developed quite a lot further than that, and I am so excited to pick up the third book. I've actually already started it. I started it last night, and yeah, I think this could be a new favourite series of all time. Sorry if you can hear the plane outside. I am filming this with the window open because it is boiling today, even though it's actually quite grey and rainy outside, but I only have one more book to talk about, and that is The Atlas Complex by Olivie Blake. So this is the third and final book in the Atlas trilogy, the first book being The Atlas 6, and I have a whole dedicated reading vlog for this if you were interested in the series and you want to get my spoiler-free thoughts. I will leave that linked in the description and in the cards. It is spoiler-free, so I just talk about kind of vibes and my thoughts as I'm reading. This wasn't the best ending to a series that I've ever read, however, I don't understand why this has a 2.9 average rating on Goodreads. It's not the most satisfying ending, and in general, this series does feel a bit directionless, so I can understand getting to the end and thinking, what was the point? I loved the atmosphere though, and I thought the characters were so interesting. I liked seeing this group dynamic and how these characters interacted with each other and everything that they decided to do. I felt like I was just hanging out in this world as an outside observer. So this third book I gave 4 stars. I gave books 1 and 2 5 stars. I think the second book is still my favourite. Glad I read it, and I'm really glad that I liked this third book because I know that a lot of people haven't. But that does bring me to the end of this video, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye!